Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Collider Live. It is Friday. A little early start here, but we are happy to do just that. I wanted to introduce everybody on the table today, but also let you know that from Cobra Kai today at 10:30, Sensei Kreese, Martin Kove. Pain does not exist in this dojo. So, look, there's a lot to talk about here. We had a lot of things that we were going to talk about, but elephant in the room, a big conversation.
Don't. Jay's a big guy. You don't have to call him.
See, you started on the bullshit already.
You're starting already. But no, look, a lot happened yesterday, and anytime a particular subject matter like this comes up, it's going to be touchy. There's going to be ways that you can represent yourself. There's going to be ways that you can say that some people will understand, and some people will say that you're wrong. And yesterday, so what happened with Jordan Peele's comments? We had an organic conversation about it. It wasn't one of these things to where it was okay, it is in the show's docket, let's talk about it. Because I saw, and Jay and I actually, first of all, Jay Washington is here to join us today. Dorina is here, Josh is here, and John Rocha has joined.
Yo.
So Jay, you and I, so first of all, and understandably so, we had a nice conversation.
Yeah, you and I had
on the phone.
Nice long conversation.
We had a great conversation, and understandably, there was things inside of the conversation which we'll get to in a little bit, to where you were hurt by,
right,
and you were concerned by,
right. And
so what we do, and what the society does in general, is sometimes we tweet instead of calling. And that happened last night.
Well, like I told you on the phone last night, had I called you at that moment, we probably would have been friends. Though
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true. But it would have been the level of upsetness.
True.
And the thing was, at first, I hadn't seen the episode. I hadn't seen yesterday's episode.
People just tweeting at you.
I constantly got tweeted. I got Facebook messages. I even got text messages like, "Yo, you need to check this out." And because
this is a show that you're on,
because it's a show I'm on, people I'm friends with, and everything. Everyone's like, "Check this out."
Right.
So when I saw it, I literally was like,
What's happening?
What?
Okay.
And I get the discussion.
Yeah.
But it was remarks within the discussion
and
as a whole. And we'll get all to that. But yeah. So that was where.
And that's where the tweet came. So we talked and we had a good conversation about it. We removed the clip yesterday from the podcast channel, not the conversation from the actual show. And the reason why is because, like I said, the actual conversation yesterday was not premeditated. It just kind of happened organically. The clips, they are chosen out and they are put out. And I thought especially after having a conversation with you, there wasn't enough representation in that clip to put it as a separate clip. So I said, let's have you come on tomorrow. You're just like, absolutely, let's do it. But I saw some ridiculous comments to which we both, I think, agree are pretty ridiculous. To where it's just like, when we were talking, someone said, well, you have a full Skype list of people you could have Skyped into that conversation. Or there's people around you could have just grabbed. Wouldn't that be worse to just grab someone out of there nowhere?
As somebody who has been on a lot of these different networks, who's been here with Collider for about 2 years, if you just brought me in just to say, hey, we're getting ready to have a black discussion,
you'd be offended.
I'd be hell of offended.
Right.
As if they brought in Rocha and Dorina for, hey, we're going to have a discussion about Latino people.
Let's not talk about this now is Dorina or Rocha around?
Right.
Now we can talk about it.
So I understand that not going to pull somebody in. And I understand also the thing of saying, oh, well, we can't have the conversation because you can.
Right.
It's just I think when it goes to a certain level, it's that understanding of to have the clarity from all perspectives, there needs to be that diverse range of representation within the room.
I agree with you. And I think that's why we're here today to have this conversation. Because, look, and someone else talk about tweeted, as we had mentioned yesterday on the show, that on May 18th, our buddies Double Toasted will be in a live event against John Rocha, right?
Yeah.
Now, Double Toasted are guys that I've known for a long time.
Well, shout out to Double Toasted. Come follow me on Twitter.
They're great.
Jesus.
But no, they're great.
Let me have that humor moment, John. Thank you. Thank
you. It wasn't funny.
Stop for a second. You two.
This is not the Schmodown.
Listen, the Lethal Weapon stuff you guys got going on is great, but I want to save it for some other time. Right. Double Toasted, a clip got sent to me from their show yesterday too, and these are two black guys that have the same perspective that you had that we talked about, but they hit a lot of my points yesterday. And what it was is, and now we can kind of get into the conversation, was that I said he is a director that has earned the right to put in whoever he wants to. He also, through his entire lifetime, has not seen that type of representation in movies ever. So it is his right, his prerogative to put anyone in that he chooses to do. To what they said and to what I still say is that maybe the wording and maybe the phrasing is everything.
But here's where I slightly disagree with that. Because he didn't word it in a negative tone. He literally says, I don't see myself casting white men as the lead. Not that I have a problem with white dudes. It's we've seen that movie before.
And he's not racist. He's married to a white woman.
His mother's white.
His mother's white.
But
he's half white.
He's half white. Yeah. But the thing is, he says we've seen that movie before, which in all actuality, in horror films, we have millions of times. So for him to be in that position to be able to allow a different face, a different perspective as the lead, it's not saying he won't cast any white guys, because again, Get Out only had 4 black people.
No, he's saying in the lead, and
I
got that, but it's just it's to what Double Toast had said, to what I said as well too. It's just a matter of when you say certain things like that, when you push a certain group to the side, you're going to piss people off.
But I don't think it's being pushed to the side. I think what the biggest issue is, and I was telling Dorina this, and I told you this last night as well. The biggest issue is in the past couple of years, straight white men, let's just call it for what it is, have been told you can't do this, you shouldn't do that. We're adding more people, and the reason it hurts in a sense is because you never heard it.
Correct.
You never heard it. Right. So now when you hear it, it's like that dagger. It's like, oh wait, what?
And you're like, now we know. You guys.
Now you know when we feel like right. And so when you hear those things, it brings me up to your comment when you said reverse racism, which isn't a thing, because when somebody says something like that, and again, I know you don't come from a bad place. I know this, but when you say that. That's not a thing. There's no such thing as reverse racism. It's saying like again,
what Josh said yesterday.
Yes.
When I call it reverse racism, I think I just called it racism, and I'm not going to. Honestly, I get what both you guys are saying. And my point, maybe the word racism was a little too strong, but what I was saying is the polarization of those comments and the discouragement, which is what we're trying to get away from. Because imagine you're a white guy going in for a Jordan Peele movie, and this is your dream role. All you want to do is work with Jordan Peele, knowing full well that you go into that audition and he's not going to cast you.
No. He's not going to cast you as
a lead.
He's not casting you as the lead, and you're not even going to go. And that's the thing, you're not going to go in for it. You're not going to go in for it
because he's not making those types of movies.
You ever seen character? You and I both have acted. We've all acted at some point. Mm-hmm. When we see character breakdowns specifically say what type of age they're looking for and exactly what demographic they're for. And if it's an open
sometimes.
Now I was just going to say, if there is an open ethnicity, it is marked as an open ethnicity. If an audition is so strong and powerful where it can convince a director or showrunner in the case to change, it will happen. I.e., Aubrey Plaza in Legion. The role of Lenny was originally meant for a man. She went in and killed the audition. They said, leave everything the way it is. Don't change it. Let her play it just this way. Whereas with Jordan Peele, he is saying, because I have this position of power as a director, as a filmmaker, the studios are listening to me, and I want to tell these stories that have never been heard in this perspective, in this light. Because again, you can cast a black lead, but with a white director, it's a different vision. Yeah. So Jordan Peele has this specific vision. And
right, I get it. I get it.
Right.
What my problem was, and you are finding this, and listen, I'm not saying that we haven't seen all the white horror films, and Jordan Peele is allowed to do whatever he wants in his movies. That's totally fine. I'm just saying, as a white man, that is a discouragement to me. Because if I wanted to go in and audition for the lead of a Jordan Peele movie, okay, forget the breakdowns, forget any of that. It's just like your agent's like, hey, dude, Jordan Peele's making a movie. The character that he wants in his movie is this person. Go in there and knock it out. Going in there as a white guy, knowing full well that Jordan Peele will be on the camera.
Okay, Josh, I have a question for you, though. Okay. I have a question because I was talking to Jay about this yesterday and earlier. People who are of color, like people that are not straight white males, have not seen ourselves represented on screen for years, for decades, right? I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and I saw all these action superstars, and I love those movies, but it was a lot of people that looked like you guys, like you and Kristian, right? And that's fine. They were great movies. But, so answer me this. Because filmmakers in Hollywood have always had the power to cast those roles, right? And they haven't given the rest of us the opportunity that you guys have had. So I see your point that you think it's unfair, but
I just think it's like having equal opportunity.
Right, I understand, but it's not equal.
It's not.
Let John get some thoughts on it.
It's not an equal situation. That's the thing. What I hear is the same people who are saying like, and I'm not saying Josh is comparable with what he's saying, but like you hear white people go, why can't I use the N-word if they use it? I just said it's not comparable. I just said it's not comparable.
I know.
What I'm getting at is if it's these kinds of conversations you have, well, it's not an equal playing field. It's never been.
Right.
When we get to do it for the amount of decades you did, then it'll be an equal playing field, and then you can have the conversation. You don't get to wipe the slate clean of decades of injustice and racism now that everyone's getting woke. Like, you got to balance the scales a little bit.
Yes, and to make that clear.
And male-female is the same thing.
And to make that clear as far as where I was coming from, is a point where I was making, was that I happen to be on the point here, Josh, of Dorina and Jay, to where I think that Jordan Peele should, and you said that too, that he should be able to do whatever he wants. But you're not going to go into that audition room because he has made it clear that these are the stories that he wants to tell. He wants to represent his culture because they haven't been represented in so long. And I think he should do that. To be honest, I don't want to see him do movies with families that I am familiar with, because that's not the point of view. That's not the story that he tells. That's not. I want to be introduced to his perspective, and I have in 2 films from a family, and not just in comedy. And one thing that I will bring up is that the one thing that I'll move back on and I'll step back on from a little bit was my point yesterday with Tyler Perry, because Tyler Perry works in a very different genre. Tyler Perry works in comedies, and there haven't been these. It's not like a relatable family as to where Jordan Peele is making relatable families to everyone. My biggest problem with the whole thing is just, like I said, it's just wording. The same way I brought up the Brie Larson thing yesterday was, I feel that Jordan Peele, and maybe and you can still say that I'm wrong about it, and it's fine. I just feel Jordan Peele could have said, and this is the same thing Double Toasted said, was that going out there and saying, okay, for the longest time we have not been represented. For the longest time, I have not been able to see or cast people of color in roles like this. I have the power and opportunity to do that now, and those are the stories that I would like to tell. He says that point.
But I think the issue behind that. Yeah. But I think the issue of people, even Double Toast is saying it's the way he said it. But the issue is now you want to coddle people.
Yeah,
you want to spare their feelings when just let's call it for what it is.
Yeah, but you and I talked about this yesterday.
Why do you have to?
And we said if too many people say it, it becomes a problem.
Now that's true. But also here's the way: if too many people says it, but I don't think we're going to hit that point because it needs to be said, and it's being said by those at the top. You have Brie Larson, no matter how you feel about her, a white Oscar-winning actress can say what she wants to see in her press junkets. She never said she wanted to exclude white men. She said she wanted more. You have Jordan Peele.
She did say, she said, all I see is.
Which is the truth. But she's saying she wants more diversity within those junkets. You have
Which I agree with.
Which you have Jordan Peele. He is saying, I am in a position to do something many people were never able to do and won't be able to do. And I'm going to take advantage of that. And I'm going to put the black experience and the black culture at the forefront, at the lead, as my protagonist.
Right.
It is not disqualifying any white males in being in this film. It's just that the story is not revolving around a white male.
But we're saying the same thing here.
We are saying exactly the same thing, but I'm saying he doesn't have to pull back and coddle it, because then what happens is people are like, well, what is he insinuating? He's not insinuating anything.
But that's not coddling, though. It's not coddling.
I think it is. It is because you're saying, I want you to present like Martin Luther King did it, not like Malcolm X.
No.
Don't offend me. Make it softer.
That's extreme.
Yes,
that's extreme.
Well,
John. That's extreme.
No, it's not extreme.
He's not acting like either one. He's a passionate filmmaker, and he was coming from a place of a joke.
I know where John is. I think I know where John is coming from, because Martin and Malcolm said some of the same things with 2 different type of styles.
2 different approaches.
They said 2 different. Martin was like really laid back with it. Malcolm was, this is what it is, in your face.
Right.
Spike has always done that.
Yeah.
Spike has always done that, and that's why a lot of people they push back from Spike, because Spike has been vocal about what he wants to do, how he wants to do it. And the problem becomes when it's Jordan Peele, because of where Jordan Peele came from.
The comedy background, everybody feels it.
From Key and Peele, from a sketch group, a sketch show that many people learned about him and Keegan-Michael Key, in a diverse mainstream array. It wasn't just black audiences that knew about them first, and then everybody else fell along.
They're a beautiful crossover.
It was a crossover from jump.
Right. And you brought up, Spike Lee, right?
Yes.
So he's been asked before, like years ago, that why weren't there white people in his movies, right? And he would answer, why aren't there black people in Woody Allen movies, right? And so at the end of the day, I think the whole point here is
terrible.
Well, there's that. But my point is that at the end of the day, like nobody wants to be excluded. Right? No matter who we are. We're all human. We don't want to be excluded. We get it. But I do feel like when people of color make comments like this, I don't think anybody's trying to actually exclude white people. And it's kind of exhausting to have to feel like we have to walk on eggshells to make sure that your guys' feelings aren't hurt, even though all we're trying to do is make sure everyone's included.
But what my point kind of was And again, you're right with the reverse racism thing. Racist was a harsh word to use, and it was the wrong word to use. What I'm saying is that if Steven Spielberg came out and he said, "I don't ever see a black man as a lead in my movie,"
he's only had 2.
Yeah, well,
hold on,
Jordan Peele.
No, I'm just saying right now, Jordan Peele.
Okay.
He Oscar winner.
Yes.
Right? He's an Oscar winner. Okay? You're in a different level. He's making movies. Get Out was an incredible movie. It scared the shit out of me. I thought Us kind of stunk, but it also scared the shit out of me. But that doesn't take anything away from how good Jordan Peele is at his job. He's a great director. He's a great writer. I think Key and Peele is probably the 3rd best sketch show of all time, maybe the 2nd best sketch show of all time, and probably per laugh, the best if you take away SNL because it was over 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay? And there is definitely like quotas that certain people hit, and it's a weird effing thing. And I've always been on the thing is I've worked my tits off to get to where I am right now. I have sacrificed so much stuff, life, money, whatever it takes to be here. And for people just to kind of jump in things based solely on where they come from doesn't make it equal to me. But effort is hard. You work your ass off, and I appreciate you because you work hard. You work hard. Yeah. You work hard. You've got to where you are.
No, and I agree with
hard.
you. I agree with you, but also here's the thing behind that, and I'm not going to take anything I'm going to add just onto you. With me working hard as a black man, as a black actor, unless I'm already put in that upper echelon, that upper tier, I barely get a chance to break through. Even just as a black man doing this in this sphere.
And that's a problem. I agree with you. That is a problem.
In this internet sphere, it is hard for me to crack through. And so it is not. It's saying, look, I'm going to open those doors. That's why
he's giving way more opportunities.
That's why I've always said, everyone who knows me throughout this sphere, who knows me personally, I have said this to many people. I am blessed in the opportunity to be on the internet, to be on YouTube, to be a voice for a lot of people who never had a voice, and I will always represent them because I am in that position. And so when I'm in a further position to pull people up, I will. It is not saying to take away from anybody. It goes back to what Issa Rae said at, I think it was the Oscars or the Emmys, when she said, "I'm rooting for everybody black," and then everybody was like, "Oh, she's just discrediting everybody else," which she's not. We're uplifting ourselves because now we're getting that chance to be put up. And I get what you're saying. I get wholeheartedly. But you have to recognize the number one thing that's important. Off jump, you're granted opportunities that no one else is, solely based on your skin color. And I know that's not trying to hold you back on anything. I'm not trying to diminish you by any means, Josh. I'm letting you know this personally from my heart. But it's off jump you are. Off jump.
And right now, I am being opportunities taken away because of the color of my skin.
Yeah, but because more doors are being opened. Because now and I'm sorry, John, because now we're starting to say, hey, it's this backlash of, well, we have to start adding all these minorities that we've never utilized. And unfortunately,
it's kind of an overcorrection, dude.
But the problem is, and the reason it's like that is because for so long it hasn't been. For so long the doors were closed. For so long there were walls put up. And I understand what you're saying, but you got to remember, since the beginning of Hollywood, we have been on the back burner.
Yeah, and that's the point I was trying to make. Is Josh, obviously very much you make good points on defending your position, how you feel, and I respect that completely. But what you said here, the working hard, Jay works hard, Dorina works hard. Yeah. People like us
don't, though, apparently.
Well, no.
If you're white like
I think you're fine, Kristian.
I think you're pretty good.
The three of us there have been people just like us working just as hard for numerous decades in this town, in this business, in this city, who haven't seen the light of day. So if just now we're finally getting to see the light of day and more opportunities, you may call it overcorrection, but I'd rather take the overcorrection now for a little bit, swing the pendulum back to the middle, and then we're all back level again, because what you're saying, opportunities being taken away from you. Welcome to our world for multiple decades. And I'm
just saying, I wasn't there. I didn't.
No, it's not saying you. No,
Josh, it doesn't mean that you guys deserve now to be excluded.
Right. Nobody's saying suck it. That's how we feel.
Exactly.
Right.
Nobody's saying you guys are done and you shouldn't have any opportunity anymore. No. It's like we're just trying to give equal opportunity.
And that's why this statement upset me.
It's a retroactive. It's like retroactive pay.
You know what I think though, and I don't think that by no means. I think that Jordan Peele is coming from a place like we said. His mother is white. He's married to a white woman. He said it inside.
Who's a dope comedian, by the way. Shout out Chelsea Peretti.
He said inside of the comments. He said inside of his comments that he was laughing and he nodded to his moderator. Yeah. It was and people do take and I think that we were guilty of this yesterday too, as far as taking out the comments out of context when you read them in print. And again, quoting the double toasted guys, the trades and everyone else they lead with the headline of Jordan Peele said. says he's never putting white people in, and people go, wait, what? And you didn't see it. We didn't hear it. There are things, and we've said this about comedy.
Totally.
We've said this about comedy in general. And as you know, me, Josh, you're on stage and you say things. You can say things one way and nothing to do with race. Just in general about a joke. Going to the deli, you can say one thing, and it could be hysterical, right? He can say something about the deli, the same joke, and piss me off, right? But you don't know unless you hear it. I didn't hear the context and how it was said. I don't hear those type of things too. I just know that for me, the way that I was looking at it was like, because I am not on the side of the things like I'm getting opportunities taken away from me, because I happen to agree with the fact for years and years and years, there would never have been mainstream movies like this with the budgets making $70 million opening weekend with an all-black cast. It is time.
In horror movies, black people used to be killed right away.
Killed fast.
Yeah, that was the joke.
But the point is that it is time for that to change, and it is changing. My point is not necessarily whether or not a white guy, a black guy, an Asian woman, whoever says, and maybe it's just a fantasy for me, but I just want it to be something along the lines of like, can we just let's just do. I'm doing my thing. You do your thing. We're not gonna. No one's gonna be segmented out, and let's just do it because, like you said, now. You know that there are opportunities, more opportunities for you today. That it's still a big challenge, but there are more opportunities today than there ever were 3 years ago, right? And the other thing that I'm very proud of today is just because of our friendship. I understand that this is why we're here, but I want this type of thing to happen way more. I want conversations like this because I think conversations like this change people's perspective. I think that Twitter fucks with people's perspective.
Absolutely.
I think Facebook fucks with it because the amount of silly comments inside of your post came from a place of passion. It came from a place of emotion, and I got it. We talked about that. Some of those silly comments, starting with that silly Skype comment about just calling anybody to put them in, and the understanding of it. You can't just. We don't have a big freelance budget here. We don't have those types of things. But conversations need to be had, and again. More discussions need to be have of things like this because it's perspective.
Absolutely.
It's all about perspective.
And then you have people who are in those commenters in Facebook like, oh, well, you're forcing diversity, you're forcing this. It's not forcing it. It's finally accepting
and acknowledging
it. And so because there's been a pushback from it for so long, it's like when you have water crashing against a wall. And it's just building up behind the wall. And then once the wall finally breaks, it takes over everything for a moment until it finally levels itself out. That is the point of where we're at today. Go ahead.
Listen, I get the perspective, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people thinking out there right now that I'm coming across as like holier than thou and something. And I don't want that to be the case. I grew up in an Italian family. The Italians came to Pittsburgh. They were discriminated against just like every other minority that came to this country, right? The Irish, whatever. We worked our way to get to a point. There's no comparison to what black people have gone through at all. There's no comparison to what Latin people in this country have gone through at all. It's everybody has their own personal story. I just so happened to grow up in a household where my parents did not say anything racist. My friends were Asian and Indian and black, and I grew up in a suburb, and I was lucky enough to grow up in a high school that was, for the most part, diverse, right? It wasn't, I grew up in a white suburb outside of Pittsburgh, but we had a lot of diversity. And my parents never, ever said, you can't hang out with people. And I know that there are parents out there that tell their kids that. In parts of this country, the racism still is awful. It is terrible. If you go anywhere in the South, I understand having a fear of all of that situation. I just happen to be the guy that always wants to get along with everybody, right? I don't want to ever exclude a person.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with having, and I'm grateful for that. As a child, I've always had mixed race friends. I used to go take allergy shots at the clinic in Chicago, and there was a little white boy
both, not in Chicago, but allergy
there was a little
shots.
white boy named Tony Smith, and I remember his name because that was the most whitest name ever. But him and I became real good friends. We would call each other and talk about Super Mario Brothers 3. And so I get that, but I grew up in the hood. I get that you are that individual, and I'm grateful for that. But you got to realize there are not a lot of you, and there are so many now who try to play the role that they are like you, but in closed conversations and in close quarters, they're all of a sudden, well, why does this have to happen? Why does that happen?
Because they know the cameras are on them now. They know that Twitter's out there. They know this, so they're just trying to put on a face.
They're trying to put on a face.
And I understand that there's a lot of different aspects that, again, you can't read from a tweet and you can't read from Facebook that you get inside a conversation. Again, it's perspective. And again, it's one of these things, too, where I saw a lot of greatness come out of those comments, too, yesterday. I saw people who were saying, okay, I think that there are certain, because, again, like I admitted to before, whether it's the Tyler Perry comment or like Josh said, he doesn't think Jordan Peele is racist, and the reverse racism was a comment that he said in the heat of passion. He said he was apologized for it. But then there are some people that said, I've said things in the heat of passion. I want to hear what they say about this and have the conversation. Then there's other people who just go to the extreme. Well, Jay, I'm just going to listen to you, and then I never listen to Claudio ever again.
And I'll say that, and I'll say that to everybody who. First of all, I thank everybody who's tuning in specifically for this discussion because again, this is something that needs to be had from all different perspectives.
And in more places, not just here.
And not just here. And for everybody who's like, well, I want to hear it now that you're on here. Okay, fine. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to bring this in. But now that you're hearing it, don't be closed off to it after this.
Right.
Because this discussion has to keep being had because of the day and age in which we're in.
By everyone.
By everyone. And that's what I'm saying. By everyone.
Because I don't want it to ever seem like to where because you guys and I don't think anybody disputed to what you John said and what Dorina said and what you said is the fact that we know for forever the opportunities have not been there for you and they are too. But I also think there are times that everyone should be able to have those conversations like what you guys just did. I understand how you feel. I understand how you feel. Here's why I feel like that. I see your point. I don't agree with it because instead of screaming at each other, that's what everybody does is scream at each other.
And also, ignorant like 40 times on Twitter yesterday.
Yeah,
I mean,
and at the same time, also, I mean, it does. I do think it's bizarre that people think that a certain set of people, because of the way you look, you can't talk about certain things.
I got that yesterday. Someone's like, because now we're bringing attention to it, so now you're going to talk about it. What happened with the Crazy Rich Asians? What happened with this? We can have organic conversations.
Yeah, no, you can talk about it, but you also need representation, right?
Yes.
That's why I'm glad Jay was coming on the show today,
and
right?
You're here every week.
Right, but also, we do also need more females on here, right? It's just Roxy and I, like one female, and I get it that it's budget, right?
Yeah.
But the important thing is to talk about it and discuss it, and there's nothing wrong with talking about it. And also, people need to chill out because when we're bringing up these situations, most of the time people are just coming from a place where they're feeling discriminated,
and their backs against the wall, and they put their fists.
Yes, and we all want the same thing. We all want to be included.
No, I think representation is extremely, extremely important, and I think it's where we are as a society is I think a lot of parents finally with our generation are talking to their children about this whole thing, right? Is the representation. It's not about furthering one race above each other. It's about the inclusion. It's about the representation.
Also, absolutely.
And I think that's the most important part. And that's why these Jordan Peele comments upset me.
And I have to, and since you brought that up, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I have to, because I'm remiss if I don't bring this up. When you brought up the Lauryn Hill thing, Lauryn Hill never said that. That was, what you said has been a rumor circulating for years.
Right.
Lauryn Hill says she wants to make music for her children, for her people.
The comments that were misconstrued were
no.
Which ones?
I was thought because I thought
there is a
that she said. Oh, that she said white people shouldn't listen to my music.
Yeah, that has been going around for.
And she's never said that.
She's never said that.
Yeah.
But see, that's how things get misconstrued.
Sure.
That has gone around for years. Everybody's like, oh, well, Lauryn Hill don't like white people. She's never said that. She says,
although Kanye West did say George Bush doesn't like black people.
Well, Kanye said that from his heart.
And Kanye does a lot of stupid shit.
But there are things again misconstrued, things taken out of context.
Totally.
Again, Jordan Peele's comments when people saw the headlines, the clickbait headlines, this is every trade.
They don't read it. They don't listen to it. Like
every trade
we were guilty. We didn't read the whole thing.
Because I know people are like, what do you mean? Oh, certain websites? No. I'm talking about how the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, everybody
ran with that time.
Everybody went that exact way and didn't make people say, oh, well, I have to read the article to figure out what he's talking about. And no matter what, you don't want to read it because you're already upset.
And you're heated.
You're heated. But the thing is, this discussion has to be had. It's an uncomfortable discussion. That's why it needs to be had.
Right.
Because people don't want to talk about that. Oh, it may get too heated. It may get too intense.
Well, that's the point. And that is the point yesterday, too, to where, and again, we talked for like an hour last night. And we talked, we started off with this. Because Jay and I we've been friends now for like 2 years. And we've had many conversations, not necessarily like this, but heated conversations or emotional conversations, whether it's schmodown stuff or whatever it might be. We have we're friends.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things we texted first. Then we both realized texting's going to lead nowhere. So we called and we said, look, we're buddies. Let's talk about this thing. I said, I'm just going to give you my point of view on this thing. And I did. And then you gave your point of view. And we met in the middle. And we said, like, dude, you just need to be on the show. We just need to talk about this out there because I think people do get scared to talk about this because, and I know no matter what, there's going to be comments on this conversation that still say, he's an idiot or I'm an idiot.
Or just saying, I'm just wrong. I'm just trying to force something.
Right. And we can't worry about that. You've got to worry about your perspective. You have to worry about your perspective, and that's what makes this whole thing stronger. And I think it's because of people, honestly, at this table that are willing to have that conversation that things are getting better. Because I think someone like John Rocha, who, from the day I met him, is always fighting for equal opportunities and to get his face in front of to get his face and other people as far as always advocating for strong women. I mean, John, you've been silent for a lot of this too, so you're taking it in.
Just listening.
No, you're not taking it in. I'm curious where your head's at because
No.
you have a very strong voice in topics like this.
Well, I just listen intently because everything that Jay is saying, I agree with for the most part, doing it as well. And Josh, I hear Josh's point of view, and I absolutely respect it. I have a number of, white friends that I have these conversations with, and Josh, I think it's great that you grew up in a family that preached that diversity and preached that feeling of everyone's equal. I think I would throw this out there. Most of us are raised in a family where, look, you're Latino, you have to work harder than everybody else. You're black, you have to work harder than everybody else. You're black, don't wear a hoodie. You're Latino, don't be out late at
because
night.
I grew up in a house, my parents didn't tell me to work my ass off?
No. That's not what?
No.
Why are you taking offense?
No. What he's saying.
You're saying you have to work harder than
No.
everybody else.
No.
I'm saying
That's not what he's
that
saying.
in addition,
because of the way we look.
Okay.
We're told certain
yes.
things.
He's just saying there's no matter what, even though you're coming from this equal background, right? There's a thing that I'll never, and I told this to Jay last night. There's a thing that you and I, even though we appreciate, we can understand how much struggle they've gone through. I never in a million years will know what it's like to be Jay Washington or John Rocha or Dorina and the things that they went through.
And you guys all get the worst comments on the internet, but guess what? Just being a woman on the internet.
No, you get the worst than we do.
Dude, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is.
Right. No,
that's what I'm trying to get across. And that's what I'm trying to get across is that I also was raised in a family was like equality. I had white friends, black friends. My best friend's always been a black person, and that's always been the thing. And but I've also had a lot of white friends as well. Christian for years and stuff like that. Everybody here, acquaintances. I'm sorry, I apologize. But no. I mean, those kinds of things are great to have diversity, to have understanding. But what I'm saying, Josh, is that we're all equal to a degree in the house we were raised in that way. But we're taught that we have to work doubly
It's an extra
hard.
step.
There's that extra step, and that's what I'm trying to get across to you. That's what we have inherently in our bodies.
Right.
Why I push what you talked about, Kristian. Why I push representation. Why I push. And when I hear the word meritocracy, it really does frustrate me sometimes because we're not in that world where we're all equal. So sometimes representation, you should give representation to another person who may not be as qualified as another white person because guess what? You've been giving your white friends a lot of opportunities for too fucking long. And that's what I'm getting at.
Not really quick, not even 3 years ago, people were pissed off because there was a black stormtrooper.
They
lost their
lost it, and it's still going to happen.
Happening. It's not okay.
Or female lead in Star Wars.
Exactly.
Just because there's more opportunities doesn't mean you're going to stop ignorant morons. I mean, it's the truth.
Remember a couple years ago the whole Oscar so white hashtag?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you remember how social media reacted? The first thing a lot of people said, well, if black people and minorities want to see more black people and minorities in their own movies,
they make their own movies. And they're doing that.
You know how hard that is?
No, absolutely.
That's so hard.
Because studios are like, well, we don't think, again,
It's not going to make money.
It's not going to make money. Now we've been proven that
and I think that's where it comes down to, and that's why I agree. Where I want to see Jordan Peele do exactly what he's doing for the remainder of his career. I want to see these are the movies. I want to go to a Jordan Peele movie. I want to see a black family in every movie. I don't need to because, like he said, I've seen it a million times. I've seen it, and I think that's the point that you guys are saying too, and what John just said too. That extra step, Jordan Peele has chipped on that extra step just a little. But he's chipped on it now because there are more opportunities for, again, now Jay Washington knows that, oh, wait a minute, if I can get in the room with Jordan Peele, I got a shot here. Right, as opposed to, Kevin Smith movie, nothing against Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith was a great dude. And he would just, but a lot of Kevin Smith movies, or Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes and things of that nature, you've got more of a shot at a Jordan Peele movie
than I do.
Yeah,
unless Kevin Smith calls me at
and that's nothing. Kevin Smith is one of the most equal opportunity guys of all time.
Because him and Mark Bernard. And Mark Bernard's a black man. Fat man on bad man.
I'm just using him as when you think about his movies, Chasing Amy, things like that. So I'm just saying, it's just when I hear the comments from anybody, of just like, and we're going to go back in circles, but it's just a matter of I think that Jordan Peele should be doing what he's doing. I don't want to see any group ever ostracized. I don't want to see, it doesn't matter who it is, and I understand all the steps that everybody's gone through and continue to go on, but I think that this conversation was needed. I'm glad that we had it. I'm proud of us in general that we could do something like this because
content of character.
Correct.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it speaks volumes because again, we can have this discussion. This is an impassioned discussion, and again, I want you to know. Yes, you grew up with some of the similar values that many Black, Latin, and even Asian, many other households have. But at the end of the day, your skin color affords you, and for lack of better words, a privilege that a lot of us do not have. And I get how you are as a person, Josh. I know you as a person, but I need you to see and understand more from the other perspectives.
Oh, dude, I totally I'm not saying that this situation wasn't an atrocity for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be a voice of a better person, like we've said on here, be better.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And absolutely. And
we want a fantasy world of everybody just loving each other.
Oh,
that's really what we want.
It's appreciative. It's appreciative. But it also has to be in the level of, I just want to be a better person and make people see this. This is what a better person can be.
Right.
But it's also an understanding of what things still are.
No,
and also listening to each other.
And I think, listen, if I didn't like you guys and I didn't think you were great at what you did, I probably wouldn't be here. This is a good show. When we do stuff, it's very good.
Yeah.
When we do stuff, it's very good. I've always been, if you can perform and you can knock it out of the park, then you deserve to be here.
Right.
And I don't look, I mean, I hate the term I don't see color because it's BS.
Right.
You see it. And what I'm saying is I'd like to see performance. When I saw you do stand-up, I was like, dude can fucking rock. When I saw him do stand-up, I was like, hey, he's got some more.
But look,
I'm just saying,
we have our
performance
guest,
and you guys kill it.
We have our guest here. What I will say is this, is that yesterday on the internet, one of the things I saw is, they won't talk about this. They're just gonna let it go. They're not gonna talk about this. Well, that's the point of this show. And that's why Josh Macuga is on this show. That is why you are a frequent guest on the show. That is why you are on the show, and that is why John Rocha's on the show, because no conversation should be held back. Oh, you're not going to talk about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. We will talk about it all because everyone has an opinion on things. It's a way that you express yourself. It's a way that you have a conversation. I don't disagree at all that everybody should have a perspective, because there is no way in hell that this conversation we had today could even remotely start to happen if someone like you were not here to share things that we cannot understand and we will never understand. And the same, even though Dorina is of Mexican descent and Rocha is Latino and has had
Bolivian.
Bolivian, and has had these things. They've not. They're very different from what you've gone through. So, but I know we got.
I gotta say one thing in your defense. Kristian and I have had numerous conversations about this off a mic, off a camera, off the air. So for you guys to bash him like that, you don't understand. Kristian's very open to having these conversations. We've had many, many conversations about this. So you sometimes take unfair criticism of that, and that's what I want to say in defense of you as my friend.
Thank you.
And also a friend of a person I've worked with. We've had numerous conversations in his office, having lunch or whatever, about this situation. So he is not a closed-minded person to this kind of stuff.
I appreciate it, John, and I appreciate you, Jay, and Josh, and evil Dorina for being.
I think we can all agree at the end of the day, Dorina is evil.
We know that. All right, listen, but what we can also agree in, it's Friday, and Sensei Kreese is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Martin Kove is here. We are going to be talking to Martin Kove. Thank you, Jay Washington, for joining us, man. Come back next week. We'll have you back in. And guys, we're going to put this clip up on the podcast channel. We hope that we can have a nice conversation about it in general. And if that is the one guy who said, I'm never watching again, we hope you had a nice journey with us. Peace out, Mother F. All right, we'll see you in just a bit.
Hey, Collider fans, John Rocha here. Look that behind me. There it is, Collider Sports. That's right, that is happening. We've got some great programming on there already. For those of you that have already watched, thanks so much. We got so much coming down the pike. We're talking about NFL. We're going to talk about NBA. There's plans about NHL. Golf is in the equation now. And, of course, the Premier League show that I host with Jack Hind, that's been in motion for the last couple of weeks. And then an MMA show is on the way from Dennis Zhang, me, and Jay Williams. All those things are happening here at Collider. And look, we want to hear from you, so we want you to listen. We want you to watch. If you're a sports fan, even if you're not a sports fan, we might entertain you, teach you something new about a sport that you may not have known much about, or maybe so deep into it that you wanted to learn even more about it. We've got you covered. You can do that. Follow us on iTunes and on YouTube. You can there watch all the shows or listen to all the shows that you want, and then leave us comments and rate the shows as well and review them. And then let us know what other sports you want us to cover. Look, we're not touching rugby. I'll just tell you that right now. That's as far out as we'll go, or cricket. But maybe in the future, if we go Collider worldwide, that's certainly a possibility. But for right now, Collider Sports is there for you. Take a look at it, take a watch, and let us know what you think.
Oh, hi guys, it's Perry here, and I am going to tell you about The Witching Hour. It is the show that I host along with Collider.com's Haley Fouch. It is in podcast form on the Collider Factory feed, and we also have the video up and running every Tuesday for you right there on the Collider Podcast YouTube channel. We talk about everything horror. We're talking TV, movies, the newest releases. We talk about movies that are celebrating anniversaries. We've even talked about books. It's crazy. If it is scary, we are talking about it on The Witching Hour. We also have so many filmmaker interviews, really cool stuff. It's all coming your way every single Tuesday on The Witching Hour. Check it out. Collider Factory and the Collider Podcast YouTube channel. Ugh.
Hello, Collider Live. My name is Amy Dallin.
And I'm Coy Jandro, and we host a little show we love called Collider Heroes. And it is all of the things we love about movies, TV, comics themselves, all the breaking news, trailers, photos, but not paparazzi photos.
All of the superhero stuff we love, all of the indie comic stuff we love, all the stuff you had no idea was based on comics.
80 years of comic lore have led to this show, and many years in film and TV, and we're living in a golden age of comics, and we want to share all of that zeal with you folks.
So we talk about the stuff that's coming out, we talk about what we hope is coming out, we do fantasy casting of things that should exist, why don't they exist?
And we do your Twitter questions asking directly to us what we think of certain things, and every single week, since we both actually love and read physical comics, buy and print, we have a comic pull list where our 5 biggest favorite books of the week come out, and we dive into those with you guys.
You can buy digital, I'll forgive you, as long as you're paying for your comics. It's all good.
But if you buy in print, you can bag them and board them, and then they're worth more later, because comics are like certain things from the 90s that are totally worth the value. Buy comics, buy in print. Digital's never worth anything later. Buy in print, keep comic stores alive.
Or we can debate collector's items all day long. We can debate casting, we can debate movie news. We can have all of our friends come join us, as we frequently do. We can ask professionals about their work. We've had some amazing guests come by the show.
Yep. We try to
can catch it every Wednesday.
That are on these properties that also love comics. You hear what it's like from their perspective, from inside, from outside, and this is all with the focus of bringing all this news to you guys. And we're here every Wednesday on Collider, and we love this stuff and want to share it with you guys.
We'll see you then.
Hey guys, Riley here, and let me tell you about the Riley Roundtable. That's right, they gave Riley his own podcast. The Riley Roundtable is on its new home. It drops every Thursday. The Riley Roundtable is a little bit about everything. It's about movies and life and movies and everything in between. I like to have on special guests for discussions like Justice League versus Batman v Superman, for discussions about wine tasting, for discussions about UFOs, and everything in between. That's right, the Riley Roundtable drops on Thursdays on the One-on-One with Kristian Harloff podcast feed, and later on Collider Video's own podcast video network. So check it out every Thursday, the Riley Roundtable. See you there.
Hey everyone, John Rocha here, one of the hosts for Collider Sports Time. That's our new show there on the Collider Sports Network. It's our flagship show, just like Collider Movie Talk. We get on, talk about a bunch of sports issues of the day and what is burning up social media, what topics are burning up social media. That's what we do on Collider Sports Time. I'm joined by my top 10 co-host, Matt Nost. Me and him, we welcome a bevy of guests every week to talk about NFL, the Major League Baseball playoffs, NHL, and the NBA, which is starting up soon. We're going to talk about that. We also get into UFC stuff, college football, all the stuff that's happening in the world of sports. We're going to cover it on Collider Sports Time. And we're going to take the time to break it all down and give our opinions and our unique takes and unfiltered thoughts on what we think about the sports news of the day. So don't forget to join us every week on Monday.
Show up and set in my super suit and be like, what are we doing? That guy hits that guy. Pow. Oh, yeah.
So this is 10 years of comics.
What?
We're going to check out some comics of our own right now, so we'll dive into some stuff. Let's check them out.
Let's do it.
Welcome back, everybody, to Collider Live. And if you see big, huge smiles on all of our faces right now, it's because in studio we are joined by the legendary Martin Kove, a.k.a. Sensei Kreese from Cobra Kai, Karate Kid. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Look, I have met, I've been privileged to meet a lot of great people here, too. As you can probably attest to, when I walked in to meet you, I felt like a kid again because I was scared out of my mind. But as I walked in, your work as Sensei Kreese, I just watched it recently with my daughter. She's 7 years old, and she looks up. She's like, he's a bad man. And you can tell this nice smile that you have on your face. We had a great conversation about the creators of the show with Josh, Hayden, and John, and they're coming in next week. But I just wanted to get into this thing with you. And you said something to me interesting. You came back to this role because of them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why is that?
They were very persuasive, and we had, I guess it was just like a year and a half ago, and we were at Dan Tana's, and we had
Great restaurant.
Yeah, it's a great restaurant, and we just sat there in a booth, arm in arm, and they just said everything about my character that only I knew.
Yeah.
Backstories that I knew. And how did you find this out? How did you, I created this when I got the part 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And then they just proved, very persuasive because they also were fans.
Oh, it's like Star Wars to them.
Yeah,
They're
it's
so
like Star
passionate
Wars.
about it.
Yeah, they've been playing with it for like 15 years,
Yeah.
The idea. And I said, wow, nobody knows all this stuff about my character. And then they elaborated on what they wanted to do in the future with the character. Right. And they said, you've got to come in episode 10 and set up season 2, and you're a regular on season 2 and 3. And I said, why can't I come in on episode 6? Why can't I really like to come in episode 6.
They say it's the reveal. It's all about the reveal. Yeah.
They said, no, you set up season 2. And I said, okay. But what they've originally perceived, which is why it's so impressive, what they've perceived, the success of the show and the success of the characters, really came true.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're really impressed by their aggressiveness and intelligence and perception, and then all of a sudden
it pops
the way they say it's going to pop.
Did you think, though, let me ask you about that, though, because, and you've heard William and Ralph kind of talk about that, too, of the hesitation at first, because it's like, here's a property that it's a legendary movie. The great John Avildsen did the first film. Director of Rocky. It does this. It's essentially a Rocky story. 1984 comes out. It's this phenomenal hit, and it has like this legendary status to it, right? And then, things happen, and years pass, and it's like, well, let's let things kind of live in the past. So when Ralph and William were brought up to it, it's like, do we want to revisit this? And because of the guys, and they do it, even though they have this take, is there a hesitation as you're watching going, oh my God, are people going to accept this thing? Because I remember talking to Stallone about Creed and even Rocky Balboa, because they were like, it's been done. Are people going to care? And with the right story, they care. But is there a hesitation? Are you nervous at all as the season is about to debut?
Unquestionably. I mean, you have, it's a character that's been, defined as the Darth Vader of the karate world.
Right.
That's perfect.
And for me at the time, I remember doing it. It was just another heavy. I was doing Cagney and Lacey, and I was trying to break out of playing bad guys. And it was interesting to me because as we were doing it, we didn't even care about the title. It was called Karate Kid.
Right.
And it was like a Bruce Lee movie title, or the Bruce Lee title. And we didn't like that, but no one experienced it as being a futuristic, iconic movie, But to get back to your initial question, when I took it on, I said, well, maybe I'll make this guy a little more vulnerable. Maybe I'll change some colors with him, And I thought that would be left to me. But no, they did it. I can't give away too much because the show hasn't aired yet. But the character is very, very, he's written very versatilely.
What can you tell us about again, I don't want you to get in trouble or give anything away, but last week, so for spoilers for people for season 1, Kreese comes back, and then it looks like him and Johnny are going to form some type of relationship, and in the trailer, we see that Kreese is definitely involved in these new students. What can you tell us about, too, that you don't want to give anything away, obviously, but what can we know?
Well, that Kreese is written with lots of texture in this season. And there's a lot of surprises coming within the relationship between he and Johnny. And you got to remember that Kreese, which comes out somewhat in the teasers, but Kreese cares about two things. And you would never know this from the movies. But he cares about how much, he cares about his love for Johnny Lawrence. It's his adopted son, and as Johnny said many times, Billy said, Kreese is a father figure to him. He never had.
Abusive, choking him out in a parking lot.
I know, I wish I could,
we've all been.
I wish I could say something about that because it's addressed
great.
in the show.
I'm not surprised. They address everything. Those guys. I love it.
They use footage. That's what's so brilliant. I
love them.
We'd all complain of these long hours, and we'd be shooting episode 8, and we have to do pickups in episode 4. Then the next day we'd be shooting episode 9, and we have to pick up stuff from episode 5 because all the shows were written so well, but they were overwritten, and then no one objected to it because they were written so well,
right.
And so you'd work your ass off, And we'd complain. Billy and I go to work together 6 in the morning, go to bed at 4:30. Get up at 4:30, and we'd be doing 3 shows, 3 crews in a day. So you could be doing episode 8 properly because that's what you're up to, but then you got to pick up scenes in the afternoon from episode 4 and then episode 2.
Right.
And it's, you're playing 3 people.
Right.
And yet it didn't matter because they were not only writing, they were rewriting, they were directing, they were producing, and at night when they had time, they were editing. So you could never complain about anything.
Did you when you got back on set, did you feel that magic right away?
Yeah, what was interesting for me, and I went in there to do basically that one day when I come in episode 10 and I say, the real story's only just begun.
I got to tell you, when that happened, I was here and I jumped out of my chair and my headphones ripped my computer off my desk. So I was watching because I was trying to finish as quick as I could because we wanted to review it, but also I ingested it so fast. I loved it so much, and I jumped up and my computer flies and I had to catch my computer so it didn't smash on the ground because I was so excited when you showed up.
Great, thank you.
And we all grew up loving these movies so much, in the 80s, and similar to Billy's character Johnny, you were both badass villains that we were kind of scared of and we loved to watch. Can you, without spoiling anything for season 2, can you kind of tell us why do you think his character is the way he is?
Johnny's?
Yours.
Oh, okay.
Mine.
Sensei Kreese's, yeah.
Sensei Kreese, was always allowed. Let me just finish that answer to that question.
Please.
I'll go right back.
Yes.
So, what were we addressing?
I think it was, you said 2 things that you care about Johnny.
Oh, yeah, he cares about Johnny as his son.
Right.
But then he cares about Cobra Kai.
Right.
And the integrity of Cobra Kai, which is why we have so many wonderful transitions going on this season, is that Cobra Kai is somewhat violated.
Yeah.
Can't go any more than that. But it's really interesting how Johnny deals with it and how Kreese deals with it. And it's fascinating because you'd never know that he cared about Johnny or Cobra Kai that much because all you're addressing in the movies is his being triumphant or not.
You don't have enough time in the movies. You don't have enough time.
There's not enough time for and the backstories were very much what you just asked me. The backstory for that was that he created the no mercy and mercy for the weak concept because when he was in high school, college, all of that, he was able to win. He was able to be triumphant, and he was never lost. Then he went, as so many of our boys did, went into Vietnam and wasn't allowed to win, as so many of our soldiers experienced.
And that's where he met Terry Silver, right?
Yeah, that's where he met Terry. Yeah. And the bottom line was that he swore he would never lose again. Mm-hmm. In other words, the no mercy concept came from, young boys from the VC would come and ask for chocolate, ask for food, and we had a platoon of men. We would gather around trying to help him, and the kid was lined with dynamite, just like in Afghanistan, and boom, we'd lose soldiers.
So he has a fool me once type.
Yeah, it's a total no mercy thing because mercy is for the weak. The kid is weak. He's indoctrinated. With communism, he's strapped with dynamite. And he blows up our boys.
Right.
Well, we can't have that anymore. I mean, he goes, and so he comes back, creates the dojos, and the dojos will. The concept is, mercy is for the weak, and we can't lose. Someone confronts you, an enemy confronts you. A man confronts you in the streets. He's your enemy. An enemy deserves no mercy.
What is the problem, Mr. Lawrence? Sorry, I had to had to go right back into it. But the other thing that we mentioned, and John, I'll let you just because we mentioned Terry Silver. He's mentioned briefly in season 1. Is there mention of Terry, or I have to wait for that?
No, there really isn't. Okay. There really isn't. I think that. They've got a backstory. They've got backstories of why John Kreese became a bully, which has never been addressed.
Yeah.
And also they go back in Vietnam, and they're going to go back and do flashbacks of that. So when I went to them after season 1 and we were very successful, and I said, well, these are my plans. And I met with Army Rangers. I met with
That's
these
cool.
killers.
Yeah.
I mean, I met
Do you still
with
have that picture?
Yeah.
The one with the...
I've got the picture, and
Awesome.
I've got the standard full-size deal.
Do you really?
In black
That's
and white.
fantastic.
Yeah. So
Incredible.
I had it. I had a plywood. A carpenter put plywood all
That's
around
awesome.
on the backside, so we could move it around because
Yes.
people were always wanting to borrow it.
Of course. Yeah. Do they use it in the show?
That one, no. They use the picture of
They
the
use
show.
the pictures. Yeah, right.
And the other thing is, it's pretty big, and they'd have to ship it to Atlanta.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's just been real interesting and just working on all these levels.
Yeah.
And they just have their plans. And I went in with my plan for season 3, and they were there.
They got it. They got it mapped
They
out.
were there. They knew. I had a great story of how Cobra Kai got its name, and they already were there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I came in. I met with the Army Rangers. I thought these really cool guys, and I had all my notes.
Didn't matter.
Didn't matter. They already had. Yeah, we know you're going to do that. Yeah, that's.
This is so great. As an Army man, to hear you talk about the Army Rangers, that excites me that you took that influence there to bring in the character. But I will say, what's fascinating about it is we can see from the last scene in the season and also from the trailer, that moment in the original Karate Kid when you tell Johnny to sweep the leg and Johnny has an issue with it, that there is the kernel that feels like the blossoming of this relationship. There's more to this relationship than you think because Kreese has a determination, but Johnny has a little more of the innocence of youth, which has been what you're saying, kind of pushed out of you from the Vietnam experience, the character. And now we as a society had to change as well because back in the 80s, it was USA versus Russia, evil, good versus evil, right? But now we're a much more fluidly moral society, so we know there's more gray than we think. So we had to change as a society to allow season 2 of this and to be able to open up to the fact that there's more to Kreese than we thought than just a black and white villain, don't you think?
Yeah, that's very astute because everybody's gray in this piece.
Right.
There isn't a white hat and black hat. I'm a big fan of the Western, and I love Westerns and all that. And, one of the problems that the transition could make, we had white hats and black hats in most Westerns. Now, ever since I think the Wild Bunch, where everybody was dark and gray, but they were the heroes. Mm-hmm. And you started doing that over the last 20 years, really. The genre, unfortunately, is an overexposed genre. I think that one of every 3 movies that came out of Hollywood from 1920 to 1967, one of every 3 films that came out of Hollywood was a Western. Wow. So now it's a tough game to to sort of find new material. But he was, like you say, it was the innocence, because I've looked at that scene several times, they were so specific that I couldn't put my hands in my waistband until a certain moment in a certain script.
I love that.
I couldn't do this until Hayden said,
so cool.
"This
That's
is what we want.
amazing.
This is we're saving
They
it
know
for
it
that
so
scene."
well.
That's
They know it
amazing.
so
You know,
well.
And to me, I mean, who am I to
Right.
When the movie came out, when the first Karate Kid came out, and it became this phenomenon, what was life like for you then? Because I'm sure everywhere you went, people were either hiding for cover, or they were like they wanted to be your best friend, or like train with you. I don't know, because you were this iconic character. I mean, you were on the Mount Rushmore of villains. I'm just going to say it. It's you are amazing in these movies, and I mean, again, season 1 was incredible. But what was life like when that first Karate Kid came out?
I remember at the time, who we're still good friends, my wife at the time, I was doing a movie. It was 1984, and I was in Eugene, Oregon, doing something with Brian Keith, I think. And I said, "Did you go to the premiere? Did you see the movie?" I don't even remember a big premiere for it. I just remember the movie opened, and I was out of town. And I said, "How was the movie?" She says, "Oh, the movie was great, absolutely." And I said, "How was I?" She says, "Well, you're okay." my ex-wife Vivian said it to me. I swear to God, it was just like that. Yeah. And I'm in Oregon. I'm listening to this. I was just okay. And because everybody kept saying it was a great movie. I saw it up there in Oregon, and I couldn't go. And, it turned out to be this iconic thing. And it just, when it's Robert Mark Kamen, it is the writing. We've all done movies, and God knows you think at times in my career I've been arrogant enough to think, well, the script is not that good, but my performance, I could fix it.
Right.
You can't. You can't do that. If it's not on the paper, it's not there.
Right.
So I'm not that arrogant anymore. I mean, Kreese is. I'm not.
Right.
So it's interesting that all this was on the page.
Yeah.
I mean, how many movies can we talk about where you have sweep the leg, no mercy, wax on, wax off, mercy is for the weak. So we have 5 lines that we remember. If we go back in history, as far back, say, as Casablanca, my favorite movie, you have Play It Again, Sam. You have The Force Be With You in Star Wars. You have Okay, Pilgrim, in the John Wayne pictures.
Made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Yeah, make him an offer he couldn't refuse. So you probably have 10 movies that you could remember since the 40s where we have a line.
Life-changing, culture-changing line.
Yeah.
Totally.
And it still carries. But this one, this movie that Kamen wrote has at least 5 lines that we remember and moments. For me, what constitutes a success in the theater is if you go and talk to someone about 4 or 5 moments after the movie's over and you revisit those 4 or 5 moments in the movie when you're leaving, you got a hit.
Absolutely.
That's a hit.
Absolutely.
Constitutes a hit.
Can I ask, and you don't have to answer, but do we get to see you wear the Cobra Kai gi again?
Because you're so pretty. Yes.
Yes.
There you go. And I love that. You mentioned something too, where you're going through all these quotes from the movie, and one of those things was wax on, wax off. And obviously, as we see in the trailer, it's a big thing. Once again, it's Cobra Kai versus Miyagi-Do. And that's what it looks like the epitome of this entire season is going to be. But I wanted to ask you a couple things, obviously, about that. About, first of all, Kreese's perspective on Miyagi-Do, and it's got to be the bane of his existence at this point. That's one thing. The other thing is I'd love to get your experiences and kind of, if you wouldn't mind, kind of sharing about the great Pat Morita and just what it was like with him, what kind of relationship you guys had when you worked together, what kind of, because just hearing you talk about your character, how much depth was in there. Did you guys have conversations about the interactions? Like, what was it like working with Pat Morita?
Well, Pat, originally Jerry Weintraub did not want Pat, and he didn't like the image of I think at that time it was the Hip Nip, was this comedy title, and then he did Happy Days, and he really didn't want it. And John photographed him, sort of made a little screen test unbeknownst to Jerry, and Jerry looked at it and said, that's the guy, And Pat did my final test. I had to read for Jerry, for John Avildsen, then on for Jerry, then for Guy McElway, the head of the studio, who wasn't there, we did a video. And Pat was brilliant. He was on the set, they were shooting, and we went off and we did that scene where, I say, if you don't show, it's open season on him. And I had to do that in a room and with the camera over the shoulder of John's assistant. And Pat was right there. And I'm talking to him right there. And he was so gracious and giving. And he was shooting that day, so he kind of left the set to come and work with me. And it was great, How I got pumped up for, I berated John Avildsen in the original interview because they gave me 1 day with the script and I was supposed to be given a week. So in order to get my energy up, I would say, my ex-wife at the time said, why don't you use the venom you feel right now? Because I got a call at 9 in the morning to be on the set at 12 to read for John Avildsen. So I said, okay, I'll use how I really feel about these people not giving me the time like they said. So boom, I got on the set, I got in front of John Avildsen, and I said, John, we wait for years to meet directors of your caliber. We fire our agents, we fire our managers, but you're a real asshole. And so are you, Caro Jones. Boom, mercy is for the weak, here and on the street. Go right into the scene. He loves it. No fragile ego there. Do the same thing, Jerry Weintraub comes 4 days late. I say, Jerry, I've been waiting for you for 4 days. You're a real asshole. So are you, Caro Jones. Mercy is for the weak. Loves it.
Yeah.
Stops me in the middle. I couldn't do it for Guy McElwain because he wasn't there. Yeah. But I probably wouldn't have because I probably would have gotten scared. But honestly, so Pat helped me with the audition process. And then we would just have so much fun because he was always laughing. And he was not a black belt, but he made it work with the warmth and vulnerability that he projected. And, when he came, we did that scene in the dojo, and when I have to look at him and refer to the venomous, point of view I had, he was always right there. So as a professional, it was great working with him.
Yeah.
And then, for years later, once or twice a year, we'd all get together and we'd have a drink at Universal or whatever and just chat about, the show.
Yeah.
But no one really spent a lot of time with each other. In other words, the Cobra Kai were trained separately and they stayed respectful and separate. They sort of became familiar with themselves. I was alone and trained separately. Pat Johnson, who was the stunt coordinator, played the referee at the end.
Right.
He ran with Chuck Norris in the 60s and 70s.
He had a great mustache, too, that guy.
Great. He was great.
He was great, yeah.
And he trained Miyagi separately with Ralph. So he trained Cobra Kai and myself, and Cobra Kai trained separately also.
Yeah.
So it was 3 different mystiques, and he was very, very effective for us.
Yeah.
And Pat learned as much as he could for, karate, and he was very believable.
This is just like the coolest
It's
shit.
the best. What do you think?
This is just awesome, man.
What do
It's
you think?
incredible.
What do you think Pat would have thought of the show?
I'm sorry?
What do you think Pat would have thought of the show?
Well, I think Pat and Jerry would have really enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
Because of the writing. It addresses so much, and it addresses the characters in a reality. There isn't, Ralph on a pedestal of being a white hat and Billy on a pedestal of being, black hat. Right. It's not Lee Van Cleef and Clint Eastwood.
Right. Everyone's human.
Everybody's human.
Yeah.
Everybody's part of, Eli Wallach and the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's still that good, bad, and ugly to everybody. And, I think he really would have enjoyed it. And oddly enough, the harder critic would have been Jerry Weintraub, who, even when you thought of something, you had to make it sound like Jerry thought of it to get it going. And he was great. I love Jerry, I played him in a play years ago. But, even he would have liked the show because I think he liked variety. He was very big on variety.
And they treated it with a lot of respect.
Yeah, a lot of respect and flashbacks back and forth and all that stuff.
The music, all of it, yeah.
I watched episode 1 again the other day. I was looking at some old Howard Stern shows of with Alec Baldwin and Henry Winkler, both friends of mine, and I wanted to see how they fared on the show. And then I came across episode 1 from season 1, and on my iPad, and I watched it. And it was so good.
Oh, it's so good.
So good.
I'm not even in it.
Right.
Yeah. And it was so good.
Man.
I couldn't
just
stop
awesome.
watching.
No.
I binge watched it all.
I gotta watch.
It's
I'm
so
gonna
good.
watch it again.
I think I'm going to watch it again.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I do have one really important question for you, though.
Yes.
Where is Dutch? What's going on with Dutch?
Yeah.
I had arranged through Pat Johnson to get Dutch's number for the writers, and he's down in. His father was my idol, and we had a lot of fun moments talking about Steve McQueen.
Yep.
And the biggest mistake I ever made in my life was turning down a part in Tom Horn, the last Western Steve McQueen made. And I was in New York, and the call came in, and I was visiting my parents, and I made a dumb decision. I would have had a whole week's work with Steve McQueen, who I love.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I would tell this to Chad, and we'd have a lot of fun times. But he's been out of the business for 30 years.
I know, yeah.
And he had, and I called him and I said, listen, you got to talk to these guys. I mean, they have a part for you and all that. And he races cars, or he's involved in a race team and lives in Palm Desert, and it never worked out. It just never worked out. And they had a part for him, and for whatever reason, he he hasn't been in show business. He's a great guy. He's a terrific fellow. And, I kept calling him, and so did Billy kept calling him, and it just never got put together. So they said that Dutch was in prison.
Makes sense. Well, hopefully we'll see him.
Well, you'll see in the episode. I can't tell you about the episode.
Yeah.
But, they address him as being in prison.
I love it.
That's awesome.
All right, last question before you go to the other thing, just shifting away from Cobra Kai here, is that we got Quentin Tarantino's movie coming up, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and you're going to be in that one as well.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, it's working with him is incredible.
Yeah.
I bugged him for years, and one day I've told the story before. One day I'm I think it was the Directors Guild, and I'm watching they're on the dais, Brad Pitt and Fassbender and Diane and Quentin, and they're talking about Inglourious Basterds, and I raised my hand to ask a question, and he goes, Martin Kove, you're one of my favorite actors. You did this movie, Firehawk, and I loved it, you in it. And I'm feeling like $1 million. Firehawk is a shoot 'em up I did in the Philippines. Okay. Major piece of shit. Okay, Quentin loved it because he's a video.
Yeah.
He worked in video stores, and he loves action. And parts of it I really liked. But on the whole, the movie, it's kind of like you have to beg for a close-up. It was one of those directors. Right. So anyway, I just felt like $1 million. And Brad Pitt grabs the mic away and says, and Mr. Kove, we just showed The Karate Kid to my 6-year-old daughter. This is about 3 years ago. Yeah. My 6-year-old daughter, and you're a legend in my house. And he had just shown it to her 2 days ago. So anyway, we went backstage, got Quentin's number. He said, we got to work together. I got home. I couldn't read his handwriting.
Oh, no.
It was terrible. Yeah. And I, for months, tried to alternate numbers and all. It didn't happen. Bumped into him. He gave me his number again. And I still couldn't make contact. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call in the summer, and he'd Django and Hateful Eight, and I wanted to be in those Westerns so badly. And I get a call. It says, you want to come and play on this movie? And it's a Western sequence. Yeah. And it's, and I said, sure. And it's really funny. This kind of guy he is. I walked up to him in the party preceding the movie, and I said, Quentin, did you hire me for this movie because I've been bugging you for 3 years to be in one of your films, or because I'm hot from Cobra Kai? And he looked at me and he long paused and said, a little bit of both.
Well, what a great story, and what a great career. I'm so happy. I'm so happy for you. Cobra Kai Season 2, end of April it comes out. I will be watching. I cannot wait, as well as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The great Martin Kove, thank you so much for being here, sir. Really appreciate it. And guys, thank you for tuning in this week. Thank you for Jay Washington to come in and have a very, very important conversation, as well as John Rocha, Josh Macuga, Dorina, the whole crew. We will see you on Monday. A lot of great guests next week. We're going to have the creators of Cobra Kai, and I believe it's either next week or the following. Riley was better at that than I am. All right, make sure that you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all those things. Subscribe to Collider Video, and buy your tickets for the SchmodownLive.com. We'll see you on Monday.